The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
How do you spell Daniel Sprong in Russia? Trevor, did you ever win a spelling bee?
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I've never won a spelling bee, but I have won the opportunity to do this. Host Locked On Canucks alongside my brother, Kyle Bowen. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks, and also a Canucks Raider currently with Daily Hive Vancouver. Before we dive into today's episode, we got to thank you for tuning into Locked On Big Canucks, because it is your Canucks every damn day. We're part of that Locked On Podcast Network. They're doing the most for sports fans across the world. And for our show, if you haven't done so already, make sure you go subscribe and like this video on YouTube. And on the podcast side, go follow us and leave a good old 5-star review, because we are not here without you, but we're also not here without the sponsors. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. As time passes along here, we get closer and closer to the start of the Canucks regular season. They got one more preseason game on Friday, but guess what? The regular season actually kicks off tomorrow as well. Oh, baby. With the global series in Europe, Sabres and Devils. Yeah, a regular season kicks off tomorrow. The Canucks also play a preseason game. Figure that one out. What else we got to figure out? Who is Pettersson going to play with? We have more hints on that. We touched on that a bit yesterday, but let's dive a little deeper, because the Canucks might have the next Andrei Kuzmenko playing on their top line. In fact, could they have a guy that's the new and improved version of Andrei Kuzmenko? What? The hype train might spin out of control here early on in this episode of Locked On Canucks. Let's get into it. Before I do that, let me introduce my brother, my twin, Kyle Bowen. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. Staying blessed. One love to everyone listening to this or watching this. Take care of your people. Spend time with your people, okay? That's the message from today's episode. Speaking of your people, Daniel Sprong, one of those people, the Don't Doze Art Lab, also some of those people, right? The place that gives you that West Coast bias. And hopefully Daniel Sprong can give a lot of that as well, because the dude's got to get paid, for real. There's not a player in the world of sport that I want being, and take this lightly, but more selfish to some extent than Daniel Sprong, okay? For real. I want this guy to live up to his potential and capitalize, or, build off the momentum that he's had in recent history with like these 40-point, 20-goal seasons, right? And blow the F up with the Vancouver Canucks and Elias Pettersson, okay? Go get 60 to 70 points, score 34 goals, and sign a deal with the San Jose Sharks worth 4 years at $20 million. That's what I want for Daniel Sprong. No, it's just the truth. You're laughing. But I want this guy to become the next Andrei Kuzmenko. That's what I'm trying to say, okay? Speaking of which, it's interesting how we've done A, B, C, D, E, F, G when it comes to trying to figure out what's up with Pettersson and who can play with Pettersson. And then we went from, Mikheyev and Lafferty to Jake Gensel to Jake DeBrusk. And now we have Daniel Sprong instead of Jonathan Lekkerimäki. And the whole Daniel Sprong thing is making me think about when Pettersson was really elite offensively and who his best friend was. Because last time I checked, his best winger, not named Bestron Miller in this thing called his NHL career, was Andrei Kuzmenko.
Yeah, which is crazy to think about, right? I mean, it's easy to forget because just how precipitously Kuzmenko fell off in Vancouver and how he just wasn't trusted by this coaching staff. But Kuzmenko and Pettersson were electric in that 2022-23 season. I mean, of the handful of times I was at the rink live watching games, especially, it's like my number one takeaway was Kuzmenko and Pettersson almost every night. And now, again, entering this season, Kuzmenko is now a very much a thing of the past, even though it doesn't feel like he was here that long ago. I mean, heck, the Canucks only signed him a little over 2 years ago. So a lot has happened in the last 2 years. But again, we're starting to see that, DeBrusk, Pettersson, and Sprong are likely to get a shot in opening night. They'll most likely at least finish the preseason playing together on a line. And, it's easy for me to tie the parallels between Kuzmenko and Sprong because, in a nutshell, they're both two incredibly gifted wingers who lack on the defensive side of the puck. But, after digging into some tape on these guys and digging into some of the numbers, there is a chance that Daniel Sprong might just be a better version of Kuzmenko. I know that sounds crazy to say. Kuzmenko, almost scored 40 goals here in Vancouver. But I'm going to just throw a couple things at you. Look, first and foremost, if you dig into the profiles, Sprong shoots the puck a hell of a lot more than Kuzmenko. So over the past 2 seasons, Sprong has basically outshot Andrei Kuzmenko 2-1. His goals per 60 is better than Andrei Kuzmenko. Andrei Kuzmenko's shooting percentage still since entering the NHL 5-on-5 is 20.5%. That's crazy. That's unsustainable. Obviously, he had 27% here in Vancouver his first year. Daniel Sprong also a better playmaker statistically as well. More primary assists, almost double the amount of primary assists per 60 as Andrei Kuzmenko. Look, I know Sprong gives us something defensively. Kuzmenko did too. But when you look at these two players, you look at the opportunity Kuzmenko got in Vancouver, and I know he lost that opportunity, but I do think, and again, you see Talkin and Sprong, like there's been clips of them having long talks after practice. They obviously had long talks on the phone prior to Sprong signing. To me, I think there is a good goddamn chance that Daniel Sprong can hit Andrei Kuzmenko-like levels here in Vancouver.
Yeah, and you're talking in regards to the numbers, right? You're looking at a 30 goal, 30 assist guy. Can that happen? Look at how this guy skates. Look at how he attacks the offensive zone. Look at who he possibly will be playing with. And again, one of those guys is Elias Pettersson. And look at what Nucksman 77 is saying right here, okay? He thinks that Kuzmenko and Pettersson had a good relationship off the ice. Maybe this guy's a secret spy, okay? A reporter. Who knows who this guy is? He's also saying that Kuzi and Pettersson had a special connection on the ice, more notably, and they did, okay? There's this mixtape. I always mention this mixtape because it's pretty fun to watch. Dmitry Filipovich, he put it out. It's just Kuzmenko and Pettersson doing things together from a couple of years ago. And that right there is exactly it. Exactly what's missing in Pettersson's game. And that's a little bit of fun. Now, speaking of relationships, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel as if Pettersson and Sprong off the ice have a relationship as well. And if that's the case, and they can translate some of that energy, some of that brotherhood onto the ice, and maybe Pettersson can have more fun on the ice. Because we talk about him needing to skate more and, him maybe getting back to being an elite back checker and a defensive forward and talking about the staples, all this stuff. And now talking about this team being more loose and playing more offensive. And it's one thing to preach it and talk about it, but I think it's easier for Pettersson to maybe find that game if he doesn't just have another two-way player beside him in Jake DeBrusk. He also has somebody who likes to score goals, likes to make plays. That makes the game a lot more fun. And this is where I want to ask this question, Trevor. Let's say the Canucks are having some success in the beginning of the year, and Daniel Sprong is a big part of that because of his offensive numbers, but still defensively, this guy is a bit of a cheater, okay? He's still not listening completely in November and December to what Tocchet is preaching when it comes to the two-way game. Do you think Tocchet, who again wants to play more offense, is preaching that will be a bit more, how do I say it, less of a bad cop like he was with Kuzmenko to Sprong if, again, the team's having success and Pettersson's having fun out there and they're scoring goals? I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you think Daniel Sprong literally has to be like a good two-way player to survive this season? Can't he just be what Pettersson exactly needs?
I think there's probably an in-between there. Daniel Sprong, I don't think is going to break out and be this amazing two-way player, but he also can't be a defensive liability either. And here's the number one reason why. Not only does that piss the coach off, but look at the winger depth in Vancouver now. Like, a guy like Daniel Sprong is really going to have to outscore and outproduce his defensive problems if he wants to maintain a spot in the top 6. Because look who's breathing down his neck. Connor Garland, Nils Höglander, Danton Heinen, Kiefer Sherwood, maybe even Jonathan Lekermacki if he tears it up in the AHL. I want to talk about a guy like Archie Baines today as well, who I know is more of a bottom 6 guy. But my point is, there's a lot of winger depth in Vancouver. We haven't even mentioned DeBrusk and Besser either. There are a lot of options for Rick Tocchet. And honestly, a lot of guys who profile as good two-way players. So I do believe that, again, unless Sprong was scoring at like Ovechkin-like levels, I think he's going to have a pretty short leash defensively. I think to start the season, it might be a bit longer, but as the season progresses, much like it progressed with Kuzmenko in his time in Vancouver, if there aren't signs of improvement from Daniel Sprong defensively and he does get caught cheating and he is a little bit lackadaisical in his own end, then I think he's going to get replaced in the top 6.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I wish I could, go back at you and punch you in the face with another response, but it, the spiel started to tie itself together when you brought up the statement about his numbers and his goal scoring being okay, but if his two-way game doesn't happen to get better towards the end of the season, when the games do change and the style does play, or does completely again just look different, then yeah, Sprong can't survive because in the playoffs, you pretty much need everyone. Yes, everyone bought in. Because now in my head, what I'm trying to do is imagine the Florida Panthers and their lineup and their forward group that happens to be deep. But do they have one guy like Andrei Kuzmenko or like Daniel Sprong? I don't think so. I don't think so. When you can talk about them having output from some incredible offensive players, but those same incredible offensive players know how to play defense. All of them.
Yeah. I almost wanted to say Carter Verhaeghe a bit. Like he's the one guy where I think that, maybe he cheats a bit offensively. But even that to me feels like a little bit of a stretch because Verhaeghe's, can handle his own in his own end. But I think the last comment I want to make here about
Carter Verhaeghe's from like the Tampa system, like the Tampa system, the Florida system. Like, he just, I think it's like ingrained in him.
And he had a fight, and he had to fight tooth and nail, much like Sprong has to an extent, not so much Kuzmenko, but so yeah, I mean, you learn a thing or two when you get cut from organization after organization after organization. I think the last point I want to make on this is that, one of the reasons why I'm so juiced up about, Sprong and Pettersson as well is that obviously the winger situation in Vancouver wasn't great over the past couple of seasons, despite the fact that him and Kuzmenko had some insane chemistry. But look at what Pettersson's most common alignments over the past 2 seasons. It was Ilya Mikheyev and Andrei Kuzmenko. Kyle, tell me I'm wrong. Are Jake DeBrusk and Daniel Sprong not just a better version as a package compared to Mikheyev and Kuzmenko? And maybe you say Kuzmenko is a bit more talented than Sprong, although I think Sprong could have Kuzmenko-like numbers with the right opportunity. And obviously DeBrusk is a big improvement over Mikheyev as a good two-way winger who also has some hands and some grit to his game as well. Tell me this isn't the best potential winger combination Pettersson's had since, playing with Miller and Besser.
Well, it is. I don't know how much that's saying also. And you know what's crazy about your question about DeBrusk and Mikheyev and Sprong and Kuzmenko? Not to completely switch the order up and not answer your question, but I feel as if Daniel Sprong with the puck is a much faster player than Ilya Mikheyev with the puck.
Oh, real talk. I would agree.
And DeBrusk obviously
at least the Vancouver version. Yeah.
Exactly. So I am just really, really curious to see what Pettersson can do with more speed. Let's say it is Sprong and DeBrusk. That being said, this still feels as if, and now I'm talking about Pettersson's game taking a step, especially offensively, to the next level. It still feels like it's all on him because we're just talking about Daniel Sprong and Jake DeBrusk. Before we found solutions, quote unquote, again, we're looking at Jake Gensel. We're talking top 10 winger in the league. We're talking, we're going to get that guy and Pettersson's job is going to be a lot easier, okay? We're going to be better at striking offense because we got that type of duo. And now we have Jake DeBrusk and Elias Pettersson. It's actually completely different. It really is. Especially if we're talking about, again, increasing Pettersson's output. So I hope that, again, if it is Sprong and if this is going to work, it's mainly going to work not because of Sprong. It's going to be because of EP40 and the alien. And maybe, just maybe, because the game is faster around him, he's able to have more fun because there is a part of me that feels like that guy is taking the game too seriously and not having fun anymore. No, straight up, bro. And sometimes that speed around you and the flair, and Daniel Sprong kind of has that. And that's why I hope that Taki kind of allows Pettersson to find his game with some speed around him and some pizzazz, and maybe bite his tongue when it comes to Daniel Sprong taking his time to be this two-way player. It took months for Myers to figure it out. Maybe it'll take Daniel Sprong the same amount of time.
Maybe it will. And I'm believing in Springy Sprong, baby. I'm going to Sprong right into a break here. And on the other side, lots to get into. I want to touch on the most likely scenarios for Archer Shelovs as the goaltending picture gets cleared up in Vancouver a bit. Canucks on the bubble, and specifically R.C. Baines. Is he making the opening night lineup? Also want to get into the Canucks playoff odds from Money Puck. All that and more coming up next year on Locked On Canucks. Your Canucks every day after we shout out our friends over at FanDuel. All right, NFL fans, NHL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place those bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Now, Kyle, your Green Bay Packers are playing the LA Rams in LA this Sunday. Do you think this is a trap game for the Green Bay Packers at all?
Maybe, because they're a young team. They're a young team. And luckily, it's a 17-week season, and they have time to figure it out like they did last year. But you never know with the Green Bay Packers because they're the youngest team in football. A lot of talent, but trap games are, sure, they're trap games, but any week is hard to win in the NFL, especially for, again, the youngest team in football.
Oh, man, that was a very unbiased answer, man. Look at you go. Your Green Bay Packers, according to FanDuel, 3-point favorites on the road against the LA Rams. Whether you're betting on the Pack, against the Pack, or whatever else, make sure you go place your bets on FanDuel and go visit FanDuel.com right now.
Boom, bam. One love to the Green Bay Packers. Okay. Okay, we back doing this, and that's talking about your Vancouver Canucks and Andrei Sprongmenko. Bro, I'm excited for Daniel Sprong. I did not know he was that fast and that exciting. Like, he's fun to watch on TV, and again, I hope Pettersson finds it really fun to be, possibly with that guy, because that's a lot of speed around him and a lot of skill. And you talk about him wanting to shoot the puck a lot more than a lot of other players, including Andrei Kuzmenko. I wonder again what that can do for a guy who sees the game ahead of time in Elias Pettersson. Now, look at this comment, though, okay, from Zarfi. I believe this guy's a Fijian brother. What are the chances, man? Begsy, also Fijian, Kyle Fijian, and Zarfi Fijian. There's 3 Fijians on the screen right now talking about the Canucks. That's something else. Anyways, he feels like Jake DeBrusk is actually going to get a lot of time, or some time, maybe a full-time slot with Miller and Besser. And, dude, close your eyes, Begsy. That line would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, Miller, DeBrusk, and Pettersson would be something else. I mean, you're
Miller,
loading up a lot of.
Sorry, Miller, DeBrusk, and Besser. You said Pettersson.
Oh, sorry, yeah, Miller, DeBrusk. Yeah, sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah, I mean, honestly, you can see that line being a lot of fun. I think they all bring a lot of grit, a lot of tenacity, a lot of scoring ability. And how about this? Jay Schro in the comments also saying Petey and Sproglander would be a beast.
Oh,
now, we're talking about some fun lines right there, man. You want to put Miller, DeBrusk, and Pettersson together, and then Hoglander, Sprong, and Petey? Now we're cooking. Now we're having fun. Is it the most practical lineup? I'm not quite sure about that, but man, oh man, that would be a ton of fun.
Dude, man. Pettersson, who wants to, again, have more fun and shut the haters up and elevate his game and be Mr. 11.6 around 2 dudes who have some offensive output within them instinctively, who need new contracts. Bro, that could be a beautiful thing, man. That could be a beautiful thing. This whole Pettersson thing, again, how to unlock Elias Pettersson, how to get him to the next level. Sprong, Jake DeBrusk, Niels Hoglander, blah, blah, blah. Oh, the power play will get going. Yo, it's within that guy. He's got to figure it out. And Begsy, we barely touch on this because you and I feel as if we have a lot of respect for Elias Pettersson, okay? Because we watched his first game together, and I feel as if our relationship, and now I'm talking about you and I, it took the next step that late night after a couple bottles and that Elias Pettersson goal, okay? So we're close with him. We got a relationship with this guy. We want what's best for him, but we haven't talked about the fact that he is Mr. 11.6, and it's on him, right? It's his responsibility moving forward in this thing called his career to lift the wingers around him, no matter what. I know he had Lafferty and McCabe in the past, but I feel as if even though you don't have Jay Gensel, you have DeBrusk and Sprong, and you got to make that work.
Here's what I'm going to say about that. Everyone's got bad PD on their minds. The guy that was a no-show in the playoffs, the guy that struggled at the end of the season. People forget that he's also the guy that put up 100 points with Kuzmenko and Mikheyev as his wingers. If Pettersson shows up to his peak and he's got better wingers, don't you think that his potential is potentially beyond that? And I know our friend Blake Creamer came on a couple weeks ago and talked about Pettersson's, shooting percentages being a bit high in that 100-point season. But I also think they're going to remain high because he's one of the most elite players in the NHL. And also digging into it, I don't think it was crazy off the charts what he did when he got that 100 points. So I'm just saying, this guy comes in peak form and has better wingers alongside of him. Oh, and the Canucks power play starts cooking a bit more. This guy has got easily 100-plus point potential.
100%.
And he's got to do it, like you said, Mr. 11.6, maybe 116 points this season. Let's go.
There you go, man. It's got to be him. It's we can talk about the money and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's also him being the chosen one, right? Botchford pretty much saying that. Him winning the Calder, him being that guy, the swaggiest guy. He remember that question by Farhan, and it was that question about like, oh, well, what made your summer so good? And Pettersson's like, you know what? I used to talk about post about my life a lot, and now I like to keep things private. Blah blah blah. He was having fun back in the day. You know what I'm saying? Like taking photos, doing his thing. I'm not saying he has to be that again, but I just hope that in Vancouver, he can find that gracefulness. And it's because he's grateful. And again, there's just like a spring to a step or a sprong to a step. Okay, for real. Over here on the West Coast, the best coast of Canada. Look at this comment from Elston Gunn. Okay, I'm expecting a big season from EP40, bro. I bring this up all the time, and I'm going to bring it up again. Rick Tocchet and company, they want to play more offense. They want to change a bit of the DNA and the fabric surrounding your Vancouver Canucks, okay? Screw the puzzle, screw the structure. Let's loosen it up a bit. It's one thing to preach it, but it's a lot easier to be it when Elias Pettersson is, being Elias Pettersson.
100%, man. And look at the hype for Pettersson in the comments. Amphmints, watch Petey get 200 and join Wayne Gretzky. That's the stuff I'm talking about here on Locked On Canucks, baby. Hook that up into my veins, all right? From Pettersson to the bottom of the lineup, I do want to touch on Archie Bains quickly before we get to break because, Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day. This is Surrey's Canucks show, okay? I'm recording live from Surrey right now. Got a couple of Surrey boys and Kyle Bowen and me doing this podcast. And Archie Bains, against some odds at the very least, still sticks around on the roster despite guys like, Phil DiGiuseppe being cut. And Kyle, you and I talked about this yesterday, how, has Archie Bains really outplayed DiGiuseppe? I don't think either of us were really convinced of that. And Tocchet had some comments about this yesterday. He basically said that Archie Bains had an okay training camp, but he feels like he's gotten better and better every preseason game that's gone along. And again, I think that's what you want to see as a coaching staff, is guys, embrace that opportunity, continue to get better when, it makes sense that guys like Bains and Ratty are, tearing it up in training camp. And again, Bains didn't really do that. But as the competition increases, as you get close to the regular season, everyone's amping it up a bit more. And, Archie Bains, I thought, had a pretty good game against a, pretty stacked Edmonton Oilers lineup. Obviously scores the goal as well. Now, Kyle, my question to you, is Archie Bains going to play on opening night against the Calgary Flames?
I doubt it, man. I doubt it only because Neil Zaman is a better penalty killer. And they just sent down PDG. I'm not saying like Neil Zaman is like the first guy you send over the boards to kill a penalty against the Flames, right? Huberdeau, Kadri, Kuzmenko, and Rasmussen or Uyghur. I don't think Aman is, you got to go stop that. We can't get Bains in the lineup. But I think the slight difference or the slight ability that he has to play on the special teams allows him to be a stronger option for game one. You know what I'm saying? But I do want to touch on Tocchet's philosophy on why he kept Bains around too, because I never thought about that. When you're talking about the preseason, more often than not, you're like, oh, PDG played 3 good games and Bains played 1 or 1.5. Well, you know what I'm saying? That's what we kind of do. But Baines's last game was really good. And I correct me if I'm wrong. Did he play against Seattle? I don't know. There's just moments after the first game where I felt as if Bains, you could see, again, him being a little bit faster, him loosening up, him playing big, him just being first on the forecheck. And then you hear Tocchet talk about how he liked the end of his preseason. And it just goes to show that we don't know Ish, man. We can't see that. Only Tocchet can see that. Tocchet science, and it makes sense. And if he believes that Baines is just warming up and just ramping up, then maybe, just maybe, we get the best version of Baines tomorrow against the Oilers, and that's it. Not only does he beat Amon, maybe he beats Ratty for a spot because he played better than Ratty over his last 2 preseason games, and Ratu did. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's still up in the air, and good on Baines though. Good on Baines for a young guy to have a slow start playing for your dream team during this training camp after you played a handful of games last year. A lot of kids, that gets to them. That gets to them, and they can't pick it up within the camp. But one thing about Archie Baines that we have to realize, and all we have to do is look at the stats and the data and the facts, is this guy always just gets better. He always gets better through phases in his career, whether it be year by year, month by month, or in this case, week by week.
That's the proudest story right there, man. And look, here's my take on the Baines situation. I think it's going to come down to the wire. One of your last cuts is going to be sending Baines down, who's waiver exempt. I think Ratu is probably sticking around at this point. Suter's injury situation also plays into it as well. Like, if this guy's not ready for opening night, I think there's a good chance you see Baines in the lineup and Amon as your 13th forward. And then you have the Friedman-Juleson decision as well. Do you keep both defensemen, or do you send one down and risk losing them on waivers? That's another decision the Canucks have to make as well. So at this point, I'm saying Baines is in the lineup on opening night, baby. Let's go.
I like the Surrey bias. No, you know what? You're a true Surrey native, man. I'm going to buy you a couple samosas when we get back to Surrey and chill together. You deserve it, man, because I did not do my city proud there. In the beginning of that statement, picking Neil Zaman over Baines. But hey, I gassed my homie up, who I haven't met yet, at the end of that spiel, okay? Anyway, speaking of gassing people up, I think we got to do that on this last segment, okay? Shelov's not mentioned in the Calder conversation on the FanDuel website. What's going on there? Begsy, take it away.
Yeah, let's touch on that on the other side. Quick pause here. Again, you're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day. No ad read from me right now, but if you're a business or you know someone who owns a business looking for some advertising opportunities, you can make me your biatch. Advertise with us. I'll say whatever you want me to say, and I'll make it sound sexy and spicy, baby. But right now, we're going to pause. We'll be back on the other side here on Locked On Canucks.
Okay, we back doing this, and that's talking about your Vancouver Canucks, Kyle Bound, Trevor Beggs, doing us, man, doing what we love, man, and that's talking and assuming just the best about your Vancouver Canucks. The regular season starts tomorrow, not for your team, but for the NHL, which means, man, oh man, it's on. What do the kids say? It's on like Donkey Kong. Why did they say that? I don't know. I never played Donkey Kong. Speaking of it being back, though, I was in the Discord yesterday. Join the Discord, okay? It's the best place to talk about the Canucks on the toilet, blah, blah, blah. We designed some t-shirts, blah, blah, blah. It's just a fun place to be, okay? Link in the bio. I was in the Discord, and Young Static, okay? Aspiring rapper. The next LL Cool J, okay? I'll call him that. He said he cried after Game 7, man. He said he cried after that second-round loss to the Oilers. Obviously, Young Static a lot younger than us. Me and you, 31 and a half years old. I think Young Static's like 19. Still a young chap, and Beggsy, I just want to ask you, like, when was the first time you teared up because of a sad thing that happened to your Canucks?
I don't know if I ever have, to be honest. So, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not much of a crier. I tend to get just pissed off. I'm an emotional guy in the sense that, like, when something moving and positive happens, that's what gets me tearing up. So I don't really tear up when the bad stuff happens. I mean, I legitimately cried when Burrows scored against Chicago in Game 7. That's honestly, in the last 10 to 15 years of my life, was probably one of the only times I've shed tears. So yeah, that's one of the most beautiful moments ever. But I don't know. Do you have an answer for that? I don't really cry over sad moments.
Yeah, there was like a regular season game against the Minnesota Wild that we lost in overtime, and I think it was like our third loss in like 4 games. This is when I was like 14 or 15 years old. And I just ran into the washroom. I just looked at myself in the mirror, and I was just so mad. I don't know why I was so disappointed, okay? I was just so stressed out. I feel as if we needed the win. I hated losing to the Minnesota Wild, the Minnesota Mild. And I started tearing up in the washroom. And that's when I knew there was both something really, really wrong with me and also something really, really, really right with me, man. Go Canucks, go. And that West Coast bias, you can always shoot it up my veins. Okay, for real. For real. Let's get to some comments and let's also get to Trevor Beggs' thoughts on Shelovs because you're about to go dark with what you're about to say because what Shelovs is going to place a lot of games in Abbotsford this year. Where are you going with this, man?
Okay, look, I just wanted to bring things back to reality a bit on Artur Shelovs, right? So obviously we know now Yuri Patera not in the organization. It's basically Nikita Tolopilo's net to run with. You have Ty Young, who's probably ECHL bound. Jonathan Lemieux, not a lot of pro experience. It's Tolopilo or bust in Abbotsford now. When Demko's healthy, you hear the rumblings about how the Canucks want to keep 3 goalies on their roster. I think that's less likely now that there's only one, legitimate starting goalie down in Abbotsford. So here's the thing I want to talk about Shelovs. I mean, if Shelovs outplays Lankinen, he's not going anywhere. But if they're on par or Lankinen outplays Shelovs is likely AHL bound when Demko returns. And I don't think that's the truth that Canuck fans want to hear. It's not true that Shelovs wants to hear. But it's a potential scenario, right? Now, Kyle, I want to pose the question to you, and maybe you got that West Coast bias in your blood, like you said. What's more likely this season? That Shelovs finishes with a Calder nomination or that he ends up playing in the AHL for the bulk of the season?
Wow, dude. If he had writers, he could have went like, what's more likely to happen, Kyle Bowen? Shelovs winning the Calder for Rookie of the Year or winning the Calder trophy, aka the AHL trophy? Whatever,
Ooh, dang.
So could
Not bad.
Could Artur Shelovs be the first player in NHL history to win both? You gotta ask yourself that question, man.
Damn.
So here's the thing, okay? I think Shelovs is the better goalie. Again, you can't convince me to the other side of the spectrum, okay? Because again, Shelovs is the dog. He gave me some good memories last April, and he beat Nashville. I'm gonna say it by himself. Pettersson had -6 points in 6 games, okay? This guy did it by himself. And who was the backup for Nashville? The guy who's gonna be Shelovs' backup this year, okay? Like I can't just give Lankinen all this leash. He's gonna have to deserve it. He's gonna have to steal the show, even if he's good and solid. There's such a belief in me that Shelovs is gonna be dominant, and you keep the better players on your roster with the main club. I'm not scared about what's going to happen in Abbotsford. I also think that there's a good chance that the Canucks somehow, some way, and this is the bonus in having Abbotsford up the street. They're going to keep 3 goalies with them the whole season, and maybe there's moments where like Shelovs hasn't started in a couple days, and they can kind of like wire him over to Abbotsford to play some games, and then Lankinen can go in and be the backup or, take the warm up. You know what I'm saying? Like there's going to be some mathematical puzzle-ish going on with the Vancouver Canucks and how they manage this goalie situation, because at the end of the day, you must do that because you're not knowing what Demko's going to look like or what's going to happen to him post coming back from Papalitis surgery, okay? So, yeah, it's going to be a phenomenal year, fascinating year when it comes to what they're going to do with their goaltending, but at the end of the day, Shelovs is the guy, and you keep the better players on your NHL club.
I like your optimism, man. I mean, look, the realist in me says that between Calder nomination and starting the majority of the season in the AHL, playing the majority of the season in the AHL is more likely. But I'm believing in Shelovs, baby, okay? Again, FanDuel absolutely disrespecting him. I don't think they know that this guy is Calder eligible. I was looking at the Calder odds on FanDuel today, and they have, Jonathan Lekaramaki plus 4,000 to win, Linus Carlson plus 8,000 to win, Archie Baines plus 10,000 to win, and
Whoa.
they don't even have Artur Shelovs on their list.
Bro.
So again, people, the whole NHL is sleeping on Artur Shelovs right now. FanDuel especially sleep on Artur Shelovs right now. This guy has the potential to be in the Calder conversation, playing behind this defense. If he plays well, if he gets the opportunity, I think he's got a good chance to run with it. So, I mean, there's the realist in me, but there's also the believer in me that Artur Shelovs can have a really special season here for your Vancouver Canucks.
Tocchet's been around for a long time in the NHL. Feels like he created the NHL, to be honest, based on, again, the tutelage and the lineage that this guy has and who he's played with, for real. And in all seriousness, if this guy wrote a book on the history of the NHL over the last 40 years, it would win awards. Anyways, he talked about Shelovs just being resilient, being that guy, always staying calm, always staying cool. I think Shelovs not necessarily listens to the noise, but he can see where it's coming from and some of the reality within it, right? The Lankinen and blah, 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 all this jazz. And that's a good thing for him. Like this sort of internal competition that's ironically coming from the outside is exactly what a stone cold killer and an elite athlete, because she lost that guy needs to excel. Okay, for real. It was not meant to be easy for this dude. Okay, let's read some comments before we get out of here, though, because we got to get out of here. Look at this comment from Jay, man. Me and Jay, man. Remember in the beginning, me and Jay were rivals. Remember that? Boom, bam, just rivals going at it. Hey, he still corrects me on my spelling every now and then. I think that really offends him. But at the end of the day, we're getting closer because that West Coast bias is bringing us together. All right, go Canucks, go. And he said he cried after the 94 Stanley Cup loss. In 2011, when the Canucks lost, I didn't cry because we got our asses kicked, you know? You know what I'm saying? Like, it was over in, like, the second period. And it was gut-wrenching and embarrassing. Metaphorically, I was crying tears of embarrassment, but physically, I couldn't do so. That being said, if it was an overtime game and we lost in Game 7, or like in 94, like we hit the post to tie it and it was a roller coaster, you best believe it. I would have been crying.
Yeah, I mean, I might have been crying in 94. I mean, Kyle, you and I were, to age ourselves 1 year old at the time.
Oh, we were
So there's a
crying.
good chance we were crying. There's a
Yeah.
good chance we were crying, right? I know my parents said one of my first words was "bourré." You know what? But I was like you. I mean, it was different in 2011. I
Mhm.
mean, it's sports is an emotional thing, but let's hang on to the positive moments and more positive moments here to come for your Vancouver Canucks here in 2024, and also here on Locked on Canucks. Kyle, anything to say to the people? Closing comments before we get out of here for the day.
Real talk. Join the Discord. One love. Okay. Link in the bio. Designing t-shirts. Next week's gonna be a fun week. Speaking of t-shirts, Infamous actually helped design a t-shirt by giving us his intellect and his IP. Okay, intellectual property. And we'll give you more details on that next week. And he has this comment right here talking about how in 2003, when he was 10 to 11 years old, the Minnesota Wild, they come back from a 3-1 deficit. They beat the Vancouver Canucks in 7 games at Rogers Arena, and the 10-year-old Infamous is there crying. I remember being at an assembly. Like it was, I had to go to school that evening because there was like a play going on, and I was part of the play, and because every class was a part of the play, and I was so pissed off that I had to effing sing a song. I think it was like "Fruit flies don't bother me." Fruit flies don't bother me, because we had a lot of fruit fly problem. Okay, and apparently singing would get rid of it. And there I was doing that and thinking about like what was happening on CBC. Like there was no smartphones back in the day, and then I run home and it's like late in the third period and we lose to the Minnesota Wild, and it created a monster. There you go. That's why I hate losing to the Minnesota Wild. Remember how 10 years later I started crying in my washroom because we lost a regular season game to the Wild? It's because of what they did to us back in 03. Anywho, one love to you and you and you and you. Hit the like button. If you enjoyed the episode, give us a 5-star review. Christmas is coming up, and happy wives, happy lives, okay? You'll learn that when you get to 31 and a half years old. Begsy, sign us out.
There we go. Let me touch on one more comment quick from Infamous. He's asked, is Myers the most experienced guy on our team? I mean, he dang won the Calder 14 years ago. Yes, right now, Tyler Myers is the oldest player in Vancouver Canucks by a couple of years. Currently 34. The next oldest Canuck, Derek Forbort at 32. The third oldest Canuck, JT Miller at 31 years old. Again, this is not an incredibly old Canucks team here. The youngest players, for those curious, would be Atu Ratu if he made the team. And he's going to be 22 here in short order. Archer Shilovs would be the next youngest player on your Vancouver Canucks. But
I called Ratu Ratty a couple times, because like the whole rat line thing with Höglander and Garland, it's going to be confusing. I'm going to screw that up a couple times, even though I had it down. Anyways.
That's all right. That's all right. Hey, you know what? We'll be back tomorrow on Locked On Canucks to fix these errors and make some more errors. Shout out to the everyday. Shout out to Mr. Fuji. Shout out to James Moore. Shout out to Anthony. Shout out to Red Risotto. Shout out to all of you who joined on Locked On Canucks, whether you're an everyday or an occasional listener, first-time listener, a new subscriber, or you joined us on the live show on YouTube. Whenever you're listening, wherever you're listening, we appreciate the hell out of you tuning in to Locked On Canucks. More news to get into here as we get close to the regular season. More predictions, perhaps, and maybe some little razzle dazzle, Kyle. You know what? Let's dangle here like Daniel Sprong here on upcoming episodes of Locked On Canucks. But for now, we got to get out of here. I'm Trevor Beggs. That guy is Kyle Bowen, and you've been listening to Locked On Canucks.